Hi, Facebook friends, it's Kristi. And I just want to take an opportunity. I get a lot of requests for what I like to call my lovely little driftwood finish that I do on some of my pieces. And I am getting ready to do that to this table top, which you can see is pretty much 1980s yellow pine. I'm going to walk you guys over here without trying to make you too dizzy. But this is the matching hutch that I finished yesterday, and it was the same color as the table. And this is the look that we're going to get, if you can see the top, on the top of that table. So it's probably my number one finish right now that I get asked how do I achieve it. So I'm going to share with you today while I'm getting ready to do this table. So with most of my products, there is no need to sand or prime, but with this tabletop, it had some lifting. So if you can see, I haven't really sanded it down to the bare wood, but I did knock off the parts that were lifting, and it had this little gouge right here, and I just wanted to smooth it out a little bit. But you can see these marks. I want those characteristics still to be in this tabletop because it's going to be rustic. So I don't want to make it perfect. I want it to have some imperfections. So anyway, I have sanded. I'm getting ready to wipe this down with vinegar and water and then rinse it, and then I'm going to start. So I'm going to pause you guys while I take a moment to clean it. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody here to help me hold my phone, nor do I have my tripod. So you get to watch this in steps. So hang on a second, and I'll be right back after I've cleaned this tabletop off. Okay, so tabletop is clean, dried, and this is my Derby paint, which is our true black, and my trusty new S5 Klingon brush, which is my new favorite brush on the planet. And what I'm going to do is the first coat, your base coat, over the top of your surface that you're wanting to do this driftwood treatment on is going to be Derby. So you're not going for necessarily completely full coverage. It's kind of like when you just put on one coat of the Derby. That's the kind of coverage you want. So I'm going to open my jar with one hand in my armpit because I have my phone. And I'm going to start painting this a little bit and let you guys watch, but then I'm going to shut you off again while I finish it because it's really hard for me to paint with one hand trying to do the phone. So that's the kind of coverage you want right there. That's going to be one coat. Like I said, we're only going to do one coat on this tabletop. I'm going to try and get it into the little lines, but one coat, right, just like that. And then I will be right back once I have one coat over the entire table. Okay, so I'm back with one coat of Derby on the entire table. Obviously, it's still wet. I'm going to wait for that to dry, and as you can tell, I don't have full coverage. It's the first coat, so you can still see the wood grain peeking through a little bit, but that's kind of how we want it for this treatment. So, like I said, one coat of Derby, and we'll be back as soon as it dries for the first or the second step, which is going to be a wash of the Swiss Miss over the top. Okay, so while I'm waiting for these last couple spots to dry, I want to just pan over here and show you guys the 4 products that you need for this treatment. On the left is the Derby. Next is the stone. Next is the Swiss Miss. And finally, the protective glaze and ebony. So those are the 4 products that you need. Obviously, you don't need a quart of each one of these. As a matter of fact, you probably use maybe 2 tablespoons of the Derby and a tablespoon each of the stone and the Swiss Miss for the wash. But those are, in fact, the products that you have to have. So it's well worth it. You only need small containers of all 3, and the finish is amazing. So I've just got to wait till these last couple spots dry before I start with my washer. I can pull that paint off. So you always want to make sure that your paint is completely dry before you do the wash. And the other thing I wanted to point out was whenever you're doing a tabletop with a leaf, always do it with a leaf in place, because otherwise you're never going to be able to get it to match up correctly. So when you're doing a table with leaves, always put the leaves in to do the tabletop. Kind of seems like a no-brainer, but it's worth mentioning. So it looks like probably another 2 or 3 minutes for those spots to dry, and then I'll be back and we'll start with the first layer of the Swiss Miss. Okay guys, so I'm getting resourceful. I've propped my phone up on a piece of glass. So anyway, I'll give you a tabletop view of this when I'm done, but I just wanted to say, I don't want to confuse people when I say that it's a wash, because you don't want to dilute the paint with the water, but you do want your brush to be wetter than normal. So as you guys all know, that we always paint with Pure Home Paints with a damp brush. So you want it to be just a little bit more than damp. So I'll have a little jar of water and I'm just going to wring it out so it's not dripping. And then I'm going to just grab a little bit of paint and I'm going to just kind of almost dry brush with the wet. But since there's a lot of water in your brush, it spreads the paint out kind of transparently, which is what gives you the look of the driftwood. So you're just going to kind of willy-nilly. You're definitely not looking to cover up all of the derby. So you're not going completely over the derby. You're just kind of going here and there. And you'll have some spots that are thicker and you'll have some spots that are thinner. Where you very first start, it's usually a little bit thinner, so I'll go back and hit that again before we're done. I'm just going to dab some on the edges. I don't know if you can see at that angle, but I'll give you, like I said, a bird's eye view once I get this covered. I'm probably going to do half the table and then I'll let you guys take a look, and then I'm going to cut out while I do the rest of the table, and then I'll come back when the whole table is done so you can see what it looks like with just the Swiss Miss. And the other thing is you do have to let these dry, these two separate coats, the Swiss Miss and the stone. You do have to let these dry in between. So you don't want to apply your stone until all of your Swiss Miss is dry. So there, I'm coming over. Sorry, excuse my hand. I've gotten, looks like a mess, doesn't it? So that's half the table done. I'm gonna pause and finish the other half, and then I'll come back and give you guys an idea of what it looks like with the whole table done. And you can see that there's some spots that are way darker than the others, and there's some spots that are really light, and you want that variation in there. So don't try to smooth it all out. And like I said, you still want to leave some of the derby peeking out underneath. So we'll be right back after I finish the rest of the tabletop. Okay, so the entire tabletop now has one coat of derby and one wash / kind of wet dry brush coat of the Swiss Miss. So that's what it's going to look like. Very patchy, a little crazy. We're going to let this dry, and then we'll be back to put on our coat of stone. Okay guys, so now we're ready for the exact same procedure on the tabletop, but with stone this time. And so, like I said, I'm going to re-wet my brush, squeeze out all the excess, and of course I've rinsed my brush completely in between these. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but with the stone. And the stone is much lighter. And so sometimes when I first did this, I got to this step and I was like, whoa, this is a little bit lighter than I wanted, thinking that it wasn't going to give me the look that I was desiring. But once you distress this and pull some of those other colors back up from underneath and put the ebony glaze on, it is amazing how much it looks like real wood. So, and not that this tabletop isn't real wood, but it is definitely pine. And I don't know very many people who would want to completely sand down a tabletop to try to stain it to where it's going to look similar to the look that we're going to achieve with just layering the paint on there. And once again, if you had smell-o-vision, you'd be able to notice that there was absolutely no smell. And of course, I'm clearly painting on the floor of my shop. Baby Jace is in here. He went to hang out with his Grammy Lou today so Mommy could get some things done. He is walking and not very contained these days. So once again, I'm going to do half of the table, and then I'm going to cut out, and I'll bring you guys back on when I get the whole tabletop done. So put a couple more coats right there. And I think you're going to get the basic idea of what it's going to look like. Set that on my desk. And here we go. So that is the stone. So now you can see all three of the colors. And I'm going to do the other half, and then I'll be back as soon as I get the whole tabletop done. Okay, so here we are. 2 coats of the wash, 1 Swiss Miss and 1 stone. And we're going to let this dry, and then our next step is going to be to sand it down a little bit. So you'll notice that it looks, you know, kind of willy-nilly. Almost looks like a 3rd grader did it. And probably a 3rd grader could do it. I know some pretty smart 3rd graders. Another thing I really want to quickly point out, you guys, is when I was talking about sanding the table and wanting to leave some of the imperfections, if you look at the edge, you can see where there were some gouges where people have probably slid their chairs up or, you know, hit it with whatever, including one in the middle of the table. I want to keep those, because that, like I said, is going to add to the rustic feel of the wood. We don't want it to be perfect. So save yourself some work and follow my tutorial. You just knock it down to kind of get that finish off. But you want that rough edge. You don't want things to be perfect on these rustic, you know, farm tables. You want, oh, there's Mr. Fly coming to help inspecting. So anyway, this is a pretty good, you can kind of get the feel this direction because the light is shining on it correctly. Looks a little bit like wood now, kind of, but it's going to look even more like wood once we get it sanded down and then put the ebony protective glaze over the top as the final step. So we're going to let this dry, and as soon as it's dry, I'll be right back, and you guys get to watch me sand. Woohoo! Okay, so the tabletop is dry. That's one really great thing about when you're doing the water with the paint and kind of dry brushing it with a wet brush over the top. It dries really fast. So it's ready to be sanded. I'm going to grab my sander. I have got 80 grit sandpaper on here, which is a little bit more toothy, but like I said, I want this table to be rustic. So ignore the noise. You guys are going to watch me because I'm not going to stop to shut it off, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So I am pretty happy with this. I'm going to grab you guys. It has been sanded. See, now you can see a little bit of the original table color peeking through over here all along. Try not to make you dizzy. And it's been sanded. So the final step is going to be putting the protective glaze on. So I'm going to give this table a really quick dust off, and then I'm going to put you back in wide view, and I will turn you guys back on so you can watch me put the protective glaze on. Okay guys, so I have taken my Pure Home Paint protective glaze in ebony, and I've squirted it into a paper plate. And all I'm going to do, same damp brush that I've been using, my Klingon, and I'm just going to put the glaze on. This easy, no waxing. This is kind of what would be considered our waxing step with the Pure Home Paint products. And as you can see, it's a little bit easier than waxing because there's no buffing, there's no, really having to work that wax in and then wait. And the other great thing is, besides the fact that it's completely safe, is that you don't have to ever reapply it. So I'm just going to work really good at getting solid coverage on the whole tabletop. And you can kind of tell, because this is black, the ebony glaze is a black base, you can tell where it's going on. So it's really easy to kind of spread out because you can see where you miss. The other thing, you guys, is, I think this video is probably going to be about 20 minutes long, but there wasn't that much time, except for waiting for it to dry, that you guys didn't get to watch me do. So you see how quick these projects go when you're using the Pure Home Paint products, because they dry so fast and they're really, really user friendly. So I'm going to come pick you up really quick so you can see the difference in the tabletop with the glaze on it and without. So as that dries, it's going to darken up even more, but I'm going to pause you while I put the rest of it on, and then when you come back, we'll have a finished product and you guys can take a look. So we'll be back in just a few. Okay guys, so the final step is done. It is in the process of drying. It's pretty much dried. There's still a little bit of shiny spots, but I think that you get the overall finish. I'll do a close-up right there. Very popular. Probably isn't for everybody, but it seems to be pretty popular with my customers. So those of you who have come in and I start to say what I do, and then I lose you at about the second color and like, oh, that's just too much. You can see it's really not that hard to do, and it's really not that much. So I encourage you all to try it. And it really took me, if I wasn't filming this, it probably would have taken me with dry time an hour to do this tabletop. So if you guys have any questions, you know where to find me. Otherwise, I expect to see some projects with some driftwood tops or chairs. I'm doing the chairs like this as well for this table set. This table set is Kuehl, and it's going to get distressed and get sable glaze, and it will look like that beautiful little piece. So that's a matching table to go with this set. So thank you guys for joining me, and we'll catch you with the next video.